Now, it's time to bring up our very own Reverend Karol Scotta. Reverend Karol will lead us in meditation and then in her talk today, which is entitled, It's All About Forgiveness. Reverend Karol.
Thank you. So happy to be home. Traveling is wonderful, but there's no place like home, Toto. So, I'm going to begin. I was looking at the daily word for today and I was reading about that comfort. And I was reading that most of the times when I need comfort are when I'm really struggling spiritually, when I'm struggling with maybe expectations that didn't work out, or things with other people that, you know, the world would be so much easier if we didn't have to people all the time. But peopling is a part. And sometimes that's where our suffering is with the people in our lives. And today's daily word really spoke to comfort. And I think one of the ways to come to comfort is through forgiveness. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do a meditation. And we're going to do a meditation on self-forgiveness, because this is where it starts. It's all about forgiveness, and it starts from the inside out. So, get comfortable in your chair, relax, breathe in, and when we breathe in, we do it as if we were smelling a flower. And when we breathe out, we do softly, like we're blowing out a candle. So picture those, and breathe in, smell the flower, breathe out, blow out the candle. Breathe in, smell the flower, breathe out, blow out the candle. Breathe in, breathe out. God is, I am. Forgiveness, like any meditation, is a practice. It takes time. Just relax. And if your mind wanders, come back to the breath. If it doesn't feel right for you yet, don't force it. Just relax. Emotions might come up in the course of this meditation. Do your best to acknowledge them in a very non-judgmental, self-loving way. Treat your emotions like clouds passing by. Notice them, but let them pass. Make sure you feel comfortable in your chair. Relax yourself into your chair. Now focus on your breathing. What does your breath feel like as it enters your nose and exits your mouth? Keep breathing. Notice how your entire body feels. Are you holding any tension? Notice how your shoulders, your back, and your jaw just relax. For many people, those are the areas that hold tension. And if so, invite yourself to release that tension. Now I want you to think about somebody who's caused you maybe a little harm, whether consciously or unconsciously. Remember, you're in control of this process. As you build your practice, you might want to start by choosing someone who's easy to forgive, like a child or a dear friend. By forgiving others, we set the stage for forgiving ourselves. Forgiving others sends a signal that we too are worthy of forgiveness. Stay focused on your breath as you bring this person to mind, noticing any thoughts and feelings, sensations that can arise. If you start to judge, go to your consciously neutral place. Go to the place that doesn't judge. Visualize the person you intend to forgive and tell them from your heart, I forgive you. You don't need to be burdened by this anymore, and I release you. Pause and return to your breath. Take a deep breath in for 5 seconds, and then release for 10 seconds. Repeat that again. Deep breath in, deep breath out. Now bring someone to mind that you've harmed. Remember, you're in control of this process. And you may choose to identify a situation that's easier to let go of. Imagine yourself standing in front of the person that you've consciously or unconsciously harmed. Look into their eyes and tell them you're sorry. Ask for forgiveness. Now imagine the same scene. You're standing in front of the person you've harmed, but instead of the current you, imagine it's a much younger version of yourself. You're a child, standing in front of the person you've harmed, asking for forgiveness. Now, watch this scene from a distance. Does it feel easier or harder to forgive yourself in this way? Just like children, we all make mistakes. Just like children, we need to forgive ourselves so we can become the fullest version of ourselves, unburdened by guilt, by shame. Pause and return to your breath. Take a deep breath in for 5 seconds, then release for 10. And repeat. Breathe in deep. Breathe out deep. Now bring yourself to mind. Remember that in the course of living our lives, we also hurt ourselves. We limit our potential. We damage ourselves. We hold on to guilt and shame for longer than we should. Sometimes we begin to blame or even hate past versions of ourselves for leading us down the road that we're on now. But so much of what we do is based on our conditioning. So many of the ways we harm ourselves are unintentional. Imagine yourself as a child. Kneel down and look at that younger version of you in the eyes. Place your hands on his or her shoulders and say, I forgive you. It's okay that you've hurt others, and it's okay that you've hurt yourself. It's a part of being human. And I release you. Pause and return to your breath. Now we're going to go into the silence and place forgiveness on our inner altar. you're ready, gently open your eyes. Breathe deep, returning to the present moment and to the rest of the day, knowing that you're allowed to feel peace. You're allowed to release difficult feelings, and that by healing yourself, you bring more lightness and joy into the world. So you can always tell when I've been at Unity Village. I come back and I pray better. This is my self-critique going, wow, that was a really good prayer, Carol. I pray better. I come back a little more defined in my purpose. I'm joyful when I'm coming back to my spiritual home. So I want to ask you this question. Do you know why they call forgiveness a spiritual practice? Because we have to practice it. And I practice it a lot. You know, especially I went to Unity Village for my board meeting, and then I went home to my family. Now, Unity Village is a bunch of ministers and board members all doing the work of unity. So we're all there with one power, one accord, we're all in sync. We have this great mind. There's very little discourse there. And then I go home. And I go home to all those sisters that installed all my buttons, and to all the nieces and nephews that, gosh, I get so tired of my judgmental self trying to judge them when I'm there. So eventually it occurs to me, stop judging. Stop putting yourself through this. So it's a practice because you have to do it over and over and over again. Spiritual practices actually feed our soul, and they develop our spiritual muscles. And then when I come back from my family, I have mighty muscles. Forgiveness is the act of releasing ourselves from bondage. Hear that again. Forgiveness is the act of releasing ourselves from bondage. Just like prayer doesn't change God, forgiveness does not change the other person. Forgiveness changes me. It's the act of letting go of an ongoing negative connection. And sometimes we like those negative connections because we can feel superior and we can feel a certain way. They wronged me. I have the right to be right. I was a former right fighter. Still am sometimes. Have you ever experienced a negative, ongoing connection? They're exhausting. Maybe you didn't even realize it until you got away from that other person. And then you get away from them and you feel lighter. You feel less intense without them in your space, giving their energy to you and hitting all those buttons that they installed. Forgiveness resurrects our peace of mind from the feelings of victimhood and allows us to release all those negative judgments. Our human side loves to judge. My human side loves to judge. From Rosemary Fillmore Rea, that is not to say that we must accept bad behavior or that we should stay in abusive relationships. On the contrary, to do this is to not respect ourselves and certainly does not help the abuser. However, it is not our responsibility to try to change others. It is our responsibility to release them to God. We forgive them through our power of love. The greatest gift we can give others is our faith that God's healing love is at work within them, bringing forth peace and harmony into their souls as well as into ours. When we let go and let God, We free the both of us. And although from our human perception, it's not understandable why we've suffered, at some point in time, we're going to see in retrospect that everything which has ever happened to us, every experience that we've had, every person that we met, has been an important part of our soul's evolutionary journey. We'll then be able to paraphrase Joseph's words to his brothers, who had sold him into slavery. What you thought was evil, God meant for good. That was Genesis 50:20. Ask yourself, what good can forgiveness bring you? And that's where I want to get into Maria Felipe's book, Live Your Happiest. So the first chapter in here is dedicated to forgiveness. And she talks about forgiveness as a very profound spiritual practice. And for me, when I found forgiveness, when I sought out looking for forgiveness, I usually start with myself. What do I have to forgive within myself? What part of me engaged that situation in a human but ungodly way? And we forgive ourselves for being separate from God, because that's really what's happening. When we separate ourselves from God and are not seeing the situation from love, we are choosing the separation. God never separates from us. We separate from God. It's a choice we make. And through presence and through awareness, there's 4 steps that we can do. The first is to have presence and awareness of when you're being unforgiving, when you're judging. Have that presence and have that awareness. Watch yourself as if you watch yourself in a movie and say, isn't that interesting the way I reacted when my sister said, you don't know what you're talking about? Wasn't that interesting how I reacted to that? Because that little girl in me went, well, you don't know anything either. Presence and awareness, and then non-judgment. Non-judgment. She really believed that I didn't know what I was talking about. I really believed that I knew what I was talking about. There was nobody to referee the situation. So practice that non-judgment. And then the other part is to really feel your feelings. All feelings that come to us are friends. Even the rough ones. Even the ones we don't like to feel. I don't like to feel that way. I don't like to feel defensive. I don't like to feel like my sister doesn't think I know what I'm talking about. I like to feel in control, and I like to feel like, oh, everybody values me, and feel those feelings. Because honestly, whose value am I looking for? Who defines Rev Karol Scotta's value? Who defines that? God does. God defines my value. And God is my source of everything. The last thing to do, so there's 4 parts to forgiveness. Presence and awareness, non-judgment, feel your feelings, and then let go and let God. Let spirit take it in. When I took a breath, my sister said that, and I took a breath and I closed my eyes. God came through my nephew who went, well, Mom, maybe it changed. And it's really the way that Carol says it is. And I went, dear God, thank you for saying that. But it was my nephew. Allow forgiveness to transform your heart. So I want you to think of a negative belief that you have about somebody. And so think of somebody who did something to you. I'm going to think of my sister right now. And then think of that from love. Think of the opposite of what your human heart wants you to think. Your human heart wants to say, she's my big sister, but she knows it all. And from love, I say, she's my big sister and just trying to protect me. She's my big sister thinking she can guide me and lead me, even though I'm well into my 60s now. And then assess the loving beliefs that you have. Those are the valid beliefs. Those loving beliefs are the valid beliefs. And then affirm and release. I affirm that my big sister is the most loving big sister ever. And she loves me deeply. And I love her the same. And then I release that to God. So why do we choose forgiveness? Because in forgiveness we find true freedom. I liked how Tim ended the song that we sang.
Amazing Grace.
Amazing Grace.
I don't know if that line was up there. I realized that.
That line was different. I love Tim because he sings this song. First of all, I love the fact that nobody called themselves a wretch. We all got it and called ourselves souls.
I've gotten better at that.
We don't call ourselves wretches anymore. We're souls. And when Tim ended that song, he ended it with that spirit of true freedom, of God's amazing grace. There's true freedom in that grace. And that grace that we give others, there is true freedom in that grace. And it really, when you practice forgiveness, it allows you to connect with the divine. And it gives you clarity and vision. So when you catch yourself, pause and breathe, ask for guidance, and remember that we're all doing our best. Please remember that. We're all doing our best. And send them love. Forgiveness is that easy. Let go of the grievances and the stories that you've told yourself. Oh, those stories are so meaty. How that person wronged me. How that person did me. Give it up. Give up the story. It's an old story, isn't it? One that plays out over and over if you let it. Instead, you're here to write a new story. Let go of the grievances. Non-judgment and forgiveness are the same. And remember, when you hear that inner critic saying, it's your fault, you say back, no. We get to see each other, and we get to love each other's wounds away. That's how we look at it. As I seek forgiveness from others, I forgive. I have an affirmation for us to say together. I'm letting go of all the negative things in my life. I forgive myself and others freely as I am forgiven. So let's say that. I am letting go, of all the negative things in my life.
Of all the negative things in my life.
I forgive myself and others freely.
I forgive myself and others freely.
As I am forgiven.
As
I am forgiven.
The truth is, we are all one. Until next week, when I will have slides for you next week. I'll have slides and I'll have pictures and I'll have gifts from the village. Until next week, namaste, my friends.